I come here to heal.
Mike Mentzer kept removing exercises, sets, and training days. Dorian Yates reduced the volume and tried to make every working set count. Arnold went the opposite way. More volume, more variation, more ways to attack the muscle. And then there was Ronnie Coleman. Heavy basic exercises, a huge amount of work, and weights that looked more like powerlifting than bodybuilding. But was this brutal training the reason Ronnie became the king? Or was Ronnie one of the only men genetically capable of progressing under a method like this? And did the same training that helped him build the greatest physique in bodybuilding eventually contribute to destroying his body? Let's decode it.
What we did for shoulders, basically what I'm trying to do right now is do my off-season workout, even though I'm getting ready for a contest. So I'm doing my heavy lift that I normally do in off-season. So this is really off-season training being done for a pre-contest. So the contest for Mr. Olympia is 5.5 weeks out. But you know, I'm just as strong now as I was when I was 315 for off-season this year. And I'm doing the same weight at 315. Right now I'm 285, so I'm doing the same weight that I was doing at 315 at 285. But yesterday I started out with shoulders. I did the seated shoulder press. Started out with my light warm up as I always do. I warm up with all the exercises. Started out with 135 for like 15. Then I go 225 for like 12. Then I do 275 for 12. And this is all season training. I went up to 315. That's normally about as high as I go. I did 315 also for 12. And immediately following that, I go over to what I call my dumbbell laterals. But the only thing about my dumbbell laterals, since I only do shoulders once a week, I always incorporate like a giant set. But it really helps to build my shoulders up real good. So I start out, what I mean by giant set, I do four sets back to back. And I start out with 30, and I do 25 reps. Then I go to 40 for 15 reps. Then I go to 50 for 10 reps. And then I go to 60 for 8 reps. And I follow that up real quickly with another set. But I start off just a little bit heavier, like 10 pounds heavier on the next set. I do the same thing, except I start out with 40 for 25, then 50 for 15. And then I did 60 for 10 and 70 for 8.
Okay, Ronnie has already explained the sets, the repetitions, and the weights, so there is no point in me repeating all those numbers. What matters is the structure of the workout. He starts with a very heavy pressing movement, then he moves into giant sets with much higher repetitions. So he's combining two very different types of work. Heavy mechanical loading from the presses, then local fatigue, burning, and accumulated volume from the lateral raises. That is why describing Ronnie as simply a heavy lifter is incomplete, but describing him as simply a high-volume bodybuilder is also incomplete. He was both. He used bodybuilding volume, but he built that volume around extremely heavy basic movements. And this is where we can already compare him with the other systems we have already decoded in the channel. Mentzer would probably look at all this work and say that a large percentage of it was unnecessary. Dorian would probably reduce the number of sets, keep the heavy press, and try to make one or two working sets do the job. Arnold would be much more comfortable with the volume, but even Arnold's approach was different. Arnold used enormous exercise variation, different techniques, and what he described as confusing the muscle. Ronnie's training was much simpler. He wasn't trying to surprise the shoulders with a new exercise every 5 minutes. He was using basic movements, adding weight, and then doing a lot of work.
After that, those are my two main shoulder ones. But I do also do one more shoulder exercise to go with that, make it three. I only do like two since I'm doing a jump. So my next one, I go in the it's like a shoulder raise, but I use a bar, small bar, and I did I think that was 90 pounds, 90 pounds. Yeah, it was 90 pounds for 10 to 12 reps. I did like 3 sets, with that, and I just go, back to back with that. Probably take about 3 minutes rest in between that. I immediately go over to some rear delts. I start out on the cable crossover machine, but I converted to a rear delt. We got two different sets of handles, so I put in the rear delt handles, and I normally start out with like 200 pounds here and do for 15 reps, and then I go up to I do 4 sets here. I do another set, probably like 220 for 15 reps. Then I go up to my heaviest set, which the most machine I think will hold, which is like I think it's 250 for like 12 reps, and I do 2 sets at that. So it's all together 4 sets. It's crazy quick, nice house with 5 rooms, maybe 6 in town where money's coming. 80 bricks, breaking down to all 20s. It's a crazy flip. Bet you never even felt the heat. So I put the M1 next to your wave and down. I spit up all these scale. Jack's sports niggas right here. Season 11. I'm back up. When they hear me speak, they never bust and I followed that up immediately with another rear delt exercise, bent over laterals. I think I started out with like 65 pounds, and I did 10 reps. I did 3 sets of that, and that was it. I did, I think I stayed with 65 for 12 reps, for 10 reps. No, I did 10 reps, 3 sets of that. Just another hit, another nigga split in the white meat, another nigga taking the room in the mall under a white sheet. That's what you get for trying to take it there. There's an eagle in your mouth, you climb up, let's make it fair. Time to take pain to make it a little smarter. And I followed that up immediately with some shrugs, working my traps next. So I did dumbbell, 200-pound dumbbell for like, I was doing basically just as many reps as I could. Sometimes I get 14, sometimes I get 12, sometimes I get 13. I basically just did like 4 sets of that, and that was just one exercise, and that was just basically it. Because after all the stuff I had done, plus me being rushed for work, I really didn't have a whole lot of time to spend on that. Sometimes I do just one exercise, sometimes I may do two, sometimes I may follow that up with upright rows or something like that for like 3 exercises, 135 pounds, doing 10 to 12 reps. But yesterday I just did one exercise. And that pretty much completes my workout for shoulders. And I always do that on Wednesday. That's the only thing that I do for that one day. Wednesday is always shoulder. Everything else alternates.
And there is another important detail here. Ronnie concentrated this volume in one shoulder session per week. That doesn't automatically make the session better. And it doesn't mean everybody should train each muscle only once per week. But it helps explain how he could tolerate so much work in one session. The volume was high. The weekly frequency was relatively low. For an ordinary lifter, the lesson is not to copy all these sets. The lesson is to understand what each part of the workout is doing. The presses create one type of stimulus. The giant sets create another. But every extra set still creates fatigue. So the real question is not simply how much volume did Ronnie do? The real question is how much productive volume could Ronnie recover from?
Make sure everybody know this is 800 pounds. 5.5 weeks out from the Mr. Olympia. I want to see somebody else try this besides me. Look around. Yeah, baby! Hey, please! Oh! Yeah. Go, baby! Yeah! You gonna do it? Go! Come on, Ryan. Yeah, baby. Ah! Okay, baby. Let's go! Come on. Yeah. Hey, please! Let's go! Yeah! Let's go, baby! Yeah!
Okay, that is ridiculous. And what makes it even more unbelievable is that Ronnie is 5.5 weeks away from the Olympia. Most bodybuilders become more cautious as the contest approaches. Energy is low, calories are lower, body fat is lower, recovery can become more difficult. Ronnie is attempting an 800 pounds deadlift. But this is also where people misunderstand his training. They see the final weight and imagine that the entire session is one insane set. It wasn't. Ronnie progressively worked his way towards that weight. Some of those earlier sets were preparation sets. Some were still extremely demanding. And then he reached the heaviest performance. That makes Ronnie's training different from Mentzer's idea of intensity. For Mentzer, intensity was mainly about reaching maximum muscular effort with the minimum amount of work necessary. Dorian followed a similar direction. Warm up, prepare the movement, then put everything into a very small number of working sets. Ronnie's intensity came from something slightly different. The weight itself was extreme, but so was the amount of work surrounding it.
Thursday, we doing another workout here. Today was heavy back day, and what I'm working here is lower back, and I'll just do basic exercises on this. I started out with deadlift. It's always been a favorite lift of mine. It's always been a real good lift for me. It always gave me real good gains. And for deadlifts, I know I'm gonna do the mega high repetition because I'm doing heavy weight. And I'm basically just working on my lower back, just trying to get it big and thick. So I normally just do the smaller number of repetitions, and that's the only exercise that I do that for. I do just 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2, basically. And I immediately follow that up with some bent over rows.
And there it is. The deadlift was not the workout, it was the beginning of the workout. After reaching 800 pounds, Ronnie didn't say, "That was the stimulus, now I need to go home and recover." He moved into bent over rows, then T-bar rows. This is almost a hybrid between bodybuilding and powerlifting. The deadlift develops strength and allows Ronnie to expose his entire posterior chain to enormous loading. Then, the rowing movements add moderate work for the back. So, the heavy lift is not replacing the bodybuilding volume. It is sitting on top of it. And this is something regular lifters need to understand. Getting stronger on basic exercises can absolutely help you build muscle. But turning every workout into a demonstration of maximum strength is not necessary. You can progressively overload the bag without attempting personal records 5 weeks before a bodybuilding contest. Ronnie could do this. That does not mean you need to do this.
But two-time Miss Olympia, I'm still putting in 8 hours a day. And just the other day, I was watching somebody's video, and I heard them say you can't do bodybuilding and have a full-time job. Well, I hate to be the one to dispel that, but I am an exception to that rule. I've been bodybuilding for 10 years, and I've been working here for 12. And the famous question is, why do you still work here and you're Mr. Olympia, two-time Mr. Olympia? My answer to that question is, because I love it.
This part changes the way I look at the training. Ronnie wasn't living like a modern full time fitness influencer. He was training, eating, and then spending the rest of the day recovering. He trained, then he went to work as a police officer for 8 hours. And during the contest preparation, the workout wasn't even the end of the physical work.
After a long, hard day's work of working out and working 8 hours, I get a chance to come home and do the treadmill for another hour. It's a wonderful life.
That sentence is funny, but think about the total workload. Heavy weight training, 8 hours at work, then 1 hour on the treadmill. And this is being done while preparing for the Olympia. Mentzer built much of his philosophy around the idea that recovery ability is limited. Every additional set creates another demand that the body has to recover from. Ronnie appears to break that rule, but I don't think he does. The rule still applies. Ronnie simply had a recovery capacity that was completely different from the average person. Genetics mattered, food mattered, pharmacological enhancement obviously mattered, treatment and massage mattered, and his ability to tolerate discomfort and continue working mattered. But none of those things made recovery unlimited. They increased the amount of work he could handle. That is not the same thing as removing the need to recover. And this is why copying a professional bodybuilder's workout from one video can be misleading. You see the exercises, you see the weights, you see the sets, but you don't always see the full recovery environment around that training. And you definitely cannot copy Ronnie's genetics. For a normal person with a stressful job, poor sleep, and limited time to eat properly, even half of this training might be too much. This is where the basic philosophy of the channel applies. If you are progressing, the method is working for you. If your strength is falling, your joints are constantly painful, and your performance is getting worse, doing more work because Ronnie did more work makes no sense.
Well, when Ronnie first walked in here, and he'd never even been in a bodybuilding contest or anything at all. And of course, I'm the kind of person where I see a person's potential. I want to take them as far as they can go. We've had some great bodybuilders here, but no one that could ever compare to Ronnie. I mean, when he first walked in the door, his arms were already over 20 inches. He had a red sweatshirt and sweatpants on, and you could see the veins in his legs through the sweatpants. And when I saw that, it just blew me away. And I have to say, I knew he could be Mr. Olympia one day.
This might be one of the most important clips in the entire video. Ronnie had not competed yet. He had not spent years following the training system we are watching now. And Brian Dobson says he already had arms over 20 inches and visible veins through his sweatpants. Okay, maybe the measurement wasn't performed under perfect scientific conditions. That isn't really the point. The point is that Ronnie did not walk into Metroflex with average genetics. The raw material was already extraordinary. And we keep finding the same thing when we analyze the greatest bodybuilders. Tom Platz did not build Tom Platz's legs only because he trained them harder than everyone else. Lee Priest did not build those arms only because he performed more sets. And Arnold did not become Arnold only because he changed exercises and confused the muscle. Training matters. Of course, it matters. But the program is acting on the body that performs it. And everybody does not respond in the same way. This does not take anything away from Ronnie. Genetics gave him an enormous potential. Ronnie still had to realize that potential. He still had to train for years. He still had to progress. He still had to diet. He still had to suffer. And yes, drugs clearly increase his capacity to build muscle and recover. But thousands of bodybuilders have used drugs. They did not become Ronnie Coleman. For the edit, this is where I show early photographs of Ronnie, college football photographs, early Metroflex photographs, early competition photographs. Then we return to the 2000s version.
Then I tried something different. I wanted to see how many I can do 585 for, which was 6th place on each side. I was only able to get 4 because it was bouncing when I went down, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. So we had to drop it, regroup, and go for 5th place, which is about 495. And I was able to get 10 out of that. I normally do 12 there, but I just did 10 because I went for the 6th first.
Okay, this is where the video becomes more complicated. Ronnie attempts 585 pounds on the front squat. The weight becomes unstable, he drops it, then he reduces the load and continues. For most people, that moment alone would be the entire workout. For Ronnie, it was an unsuccessful attempt before another heavy set. But now we need to return to something Ronnie said earlier in the film, because this front squat is not being performed by a man with a completely clean injury history.
I come here to heal all my problems, my legs, my shoulders, my arms. Ain't nothing that I got. And a part of my body she hadn't worked on that was injured. I've injured my arm right here. I injured both of my shoulders, my leg, my back. But it was major when I almost ruptured that disc in my back about 3 years ago. Well, almost 4 years ago now. I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. They wanted to do surgery, but a specialist kind of like told me I didn't really have to, that this would work. So, and it did. And she's healed it all. Yeah, she made me who I am today.
Now we have the missing context. Ronnie tells us that he had injured his arms, shoulders, leg, and back. He also explains that the disc problem had once left him unable to walk for 2 weeks. So when we ask whether Ronnie's training destroyed his body, the answer cannot be reduced to heavy weights are dangerous. That is too simple. Many people have trained heavily for years without ending up in Ronnie's condition. Tom Platz performed brutal leg training. Bertil Fox used enormous weights, high volume, and very aggressive execution. They did not experience the same publicly documented outcome as Ronnie. But that also doesn't prove that the training was safe. Different bodies have different structures, different injury histories, different techniques, different levels of fatigue, and different decisions after something goes wrong. Mentzer argued that heavy weights alone did not cause injury. For him, the problem was losing control, bouncing the weight, and using momentum. Dorian used more controlled repetitions and much less volume than Ronnie, but Dorian still experienced serious injuries. So there is no simple system that completely removes risk. The risk comes from the combination of load, technique, fatigue, previous injury, repetition over time, and how the athlete responds to warning signs. And for me, the most important issue is not the 800-pound deadlift, it is the cumulative exposure. Ronnie had already experienced a major back problem. Then he continued exposing his spine to extraordinary weights for years. I don't think we can look at that history and say the training had nothing to do with the final outcome. But we also cannot say that one lift, one exercise, or heavy training alone caused everything. It was probably the combination: an existing problem, repeated extreme loading, the demands of professional bodybuilding, and Ronnie's extraordinary willingness to continue. That mentality helped make him the king. But the same mentality may also have prevented him from backing away when his body was asking him to change. And this is the practical lesson. Being strong enough to lift a weight does not automatically mean that your body can continue absorbing that weight indefinitely. Capability and long term tolerance are not the same thing. Ronnie Coleman's training worked. We cannot honestly look at the greatest physique of his era and say that the method produced nothing. He used progressive overload. He built his training around basic exercises. He combined very heavy weights with substantial bodybuilding volume. And he applied that method consistently for years. But Ronnie's routine was not a universal bodybuilding formula. It was a system being performed by one of the greatest genetic outliers the sport has ever seen, with pharmacological enhancement, with an exceptional tolerance to work, and with a mentality that allowed him to continue when most people would stop. Compared with Mentzer, Ronnie did far more work. Compared with Dorian, Ronnie used more sets and more total loading. Compared with Arnold, the volume was still high, but the exercise selection was simpler and more repetitive. Four different champions, four very different answers to the same question. How much training stimulus can you create and still recover? Mentzer tried to find the minimum. Dorian concentrated everything into a few brutal sets. Arnold used volume and variation. Ronnie combined volume with powerlifting level weights. And all four systems worked. But they work for different people under different conditions with different genetics and different recovery capacities. So the lesson from Ronnie is not everybody should lift as heavy as possible. And it's not heavy training will inevitably destroy your body. The lesson is that progression matters, recovery matters, Genetic matters, technique matters. And once a serious injury appears, continuing to prove what you can lift may eventually become more expensive than the progress is worth. So, what do you think? Did Ronnie's brutal training build the king? Or did Ronnie's genetics allow him to progress under a method that would have broken almost anybody else much sooner? Let me know in the comments. Mike Mentzer tried to grow by doing less. Arnold tried to grow by constantly giving the muscle something different. Dorian tried to create maximum intensity with the minimum necessary volume. And Ronnie combined enormous volume with some of the heaviest weights bodybuilding has ever seen. Different philosophies, different bodies, different results. This has been Ronnie Coleman's unbelievable training system, Decoded. I will see you in the next one.